One of the questions that we are commonly asked is how to display a table of data points so that we can see the name and the value of those points. And of course, we can bind controls like a label and a text box to individual points, but sometimes we just want to look at a list of all of the points in a given data domain, or maybe a filtered subset of those data points in a data domain. So in this video blog, I'll show you how we can do that very, very easily. To start with, we have down here a point data table control, and I'm just going to throw an instance of that on my screen. Let me just zoom in a little bit. And the point data table is specifically designed to display structured information of data points. And you can see that we've got a couple properties here primarily to address point pattern and things like that. Well, the point pattern, which right now includes a dot meaning show everything, can be very simply filtered. So I'm just typing in DataPid there, for example, and you can see we've got all of our DataPid data points, or maybe I want to type in DataSim, and again I can see those data points. Right now down at the bottom you'll notice I do have both my DataPid and my DataSim applications running to produce simulated data. So that's what I'm seeing here. There are also a couple other options or properties that we can specify to change the way in which this data is displayed. So for example, you can see that I could, if I want, say that I want to remove a given prefix. So, if I type in data as an example, it's simply going to trim the word data from the front of that point list. I could also say remove everything up to the first period. And that's what that is showing there. Well, there are no periods in the DataSim data points, and so it displays the full name. Whereas in the case of DataPid, you'll notice that in fact DataPid data points. Well, I can show you. Let me get rid of remove to string, and you can see there are the names of the DataPid data points. So what it's of course doing is removing everything up to the final period. I might decide, since I recognize that data points live in a given data domain, and data domain is always suffixed by, or if you will, separating the data point with a colon, I can just put a colon in there, and now as I go back and forth between those data domains, I simply see those points, but I don't see the data domain that's in there. So just some very simple capability that we may already be aware of. But in this example, what I want to be able to do is allow the user the opportunity to dynamically choose what points should be displayed in run mode, because of course they can't specify those properties. And so one of the easy things to do here is just to add a combo box to my screen. And I'll just kind of organize this a little bit. And inside my combo box, I'm going to use a piece of script that allows me to specify the data domains that I'm interested in. So I'm adding DataPid and DataSim in there. And what that will allow me to do is now simply, provide the user with an opportunity to choose one of those. And then I can simply use simple binding. So instead of hard coding a point pattern, I can use a simple binding to select the selected value of this control and use that as the basis of selection. And so right now, of course, there is nothing selected, which is the equivalent of a dot, so it shows everything. But as soon as I choose DataPid or DataSim, it gives me the data that interests me. So that's kind of just a very simple way, and I'll just put a note on here so that I can make this page available to anybody that asks. This is just a very simple way of displaying all data points and all table columns. Okay, so I've got name, value, timestamp, quality, that kind of information, and I have a way to show all data points within, maybe I'll just add that comment, within the selected domain. Well, sometimes what I want to be able to do is filter that information a little bit differently. So I'm going to add a second combo box and a second point data table. And the difference this time is that while I still want to use script to populate my list, what I'd really like to be able to do is allow my user to choose DataPid or DataSim, but it will use a different filtering expression for the data domain. And the reason this is relevant is because if I look at the data for these programs, so here is DataPid data and DataSim data right there, you'll notice that all of the DataSim data is directly included within that DataSim domain, just kind of flat. But in the case of DataPid, it's actually got a little bit more structure to it, and I can see that I've got values inside the PID1 subdomain, and then I've got points like controller and plant, etc., etc. And I can see that when I choose DataPid here, that it is including lots of different points, controller points, plant points, etc. But what I really want to do is, in the case of DataSim, I want to see all of those points. But if the user chooses DataPid, I only want to see MV, PV, and SP. In essence, I only want to see data points that are directly within PID1 that are 2 characters in length. So I should be able to construct a regular expression to manage that. So I'm going to start by defining a dictionary. And my dictionary is made up of strings for keys and strings for the regular expression. So I'm going to create a new dictionary that is basically a key value dictionary, where the key is going to be something like DataPid, but the value of that is going to be a regular expression, and the regular expression is going to try to match at the beginning of the data point name. So it's going to include, for example, DataPid, and it's going to include PID1, and you'll recall that there was a dot that followed that. And then I want to match any 2 characters, dot, dot. And that is the end of my regular expression. Similarly, down here, I want to be able to add a second one for DataSim. Oops, let's correct the spelling there. And in the case of DataSim, maybe I just want to take anything that starts with DataSim, and I really don't care after that. So basically, the dot star should just match anything. And the way, of course, we output the results to this property is by just referencing the property again there. And so the output of this should, in essence, be a dictionary of items. And once I have populated this dictionary and used that as my item source, I should now be able to see that I have a key and a value associated with this combo box. So I can say I want to display the key, but when the user chooses an item, I want the actual selected value to correspond to the second piece of information, or if you will, the value of that entry. And you can see that right now, if I just set that to a 0, it takes the first one, and there's my DataPid. And once again, I can do a drop down, and I see DataPid and DataSim are listed, but if I were to choose one of those items, the selected value is actually the regular expression. Well, that comes in handy because now I can simply use my simple binding to again refer to the selected value of that control. And so as I change from DataPid to DataSim, I get all of my DataSim values, but DataPid is just a subset of the filtered expression that I wanted. And maybe the user doesn't want to see all of that information, so I can come down to my table columns and decide that I don't want to show the timestamp and I don't want to show the quality column, and so all of a sudden I've got a much simpler view for that data. So in essence, I'll just create another label here so I can save the final version of my work. In essence, this one is now showing data points filtered by my regular expression. And the regular expression that I'm filtering by is actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a nifty thing here. Let me copy that down into my format string, and I'll actually use my input value here will be simple binding again to the same selected value. And so in essence, the value that I have bound to here is referencing the selected value from my combo box, but I am choosing to use a format string where I am referencing the actual value here with the parenthesis zero, or excuse me, the brace zero brace, and that expression. So I can say, for example, name and value columns only, and data points from there. So now when I go in and change this, I can see that there's the regular expression that's being used to filter these, and there's the regular expression being used to filter the ones for DataPit. So that's a very simple way of showing how we can create a list of data points that are based on some kind of a filtering expression and make it easy for the user to choose what expression to filter on and what data domain to look at.